Hi, fellow 9/11 truthers. After 5 hours of Truth for a Change, starting last Thursday, part 1 of 5 parts of a video called September 11, the New Pearl Harbor. I have a problem that the current leaders within our city of the 9/11 Truth is Richard Gage's group that he founded, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. But it seems they got stuck in a logical hole that they felt their authority as a group of engineers and scientists shouldn't get into politics. And that's what this program is about. Hello, here we are, 9/11, and I'm here to say that what architects and engineers, I believe, still are proclaiming is that we need an investigation. Things are suspicious. They don't make sense. But I invite us to consider the next step, that it was obviously controlled demolition. We don't need an investigation. We just need to look at the videos and hello, it's obvious. We don't have to bring people to swear under oath and play that game. It's a game. You're supposed to tell the truth. If you get caught, there's a possibility you'll suffer imprisonment or something bad like that. That's the crude nature of our system right now. So the reason I decided to come on camera, this is a special occasion in another respect. Following this program, the Harold Channer Show, that I often tease him I could announce at the end of my show, coming up, Interruptions by Harold Channer. He calls it Conversations. I've been on his show couple other times at least, and notably a turning point in our community television history was bringing some duct tape to cover his mouth. He and I are like founders. I started at the beginning of public access in New York City, and he pretty much the same, I think. Among my opening classmates was the Lyndon LaRouche crowd, not him personally, but his agents, his workers, his dedicated. But that didn't, they didn't go that much, having their own channel. Whoopee. Now going from a once a week to once a day, 5 times a week, that is a big deal. And I haven't gone on camera much myself. Again, after this show is me and Harold Channer, and I wanted to give him credit that he's one of the opportunities I have to face the camera. But I finally did set up a situation in my own apartment where I can, alas, speak my piece. So the piece I have to speak is to say that the 9/11 event is a big lie, a false flag, totally cooked up by the United States government. I point the finger to the concept of the New Pearl Harbor idea, that we needed a New Pearl Harbor. The right-wingers in their think tanks dreamed up somewhere in the 90s. The Oklahoma bombing, the first try at the World Trade Center in '93, but the guy didn't carry through, he didn't park the truck right, didn't use enough explosives, whatever. That was supposed to get that baby to tip over. On 9/11, Joe Friendly will reveal this information. Approximately 10 years earlier, the city of New York requested the owners of the World Trade Center, at that point the Port Authority, some quasi-governmental political mixture of New Jersey and U.S. and New York City, New York State, whatever, people with powers delegated, spelled out, whatever. They were ordered by the city of New York to deal with the problem by which New Yorkers were breathing asbestos, that their building was leaking asbestos into the air. These tallest buildings in the world happened to have a problem of the asbestos foam, supposedly 1.5 inches thick, applied to all the serious steel holding up the building. That foam, to protect it from heat, from fire, to give the firemen an extra couple hours to fight the blaze before the steel would respond to the temperature fully. And the application of that foam to the steel was improper. My guess is there was labor unrest, and therefore a philosophy of sabotage. And there was among the workers apparently an underlying theme of these buildings are coming down eventually. These are biblical events. These are the claims to being the tallest in the world. And while we're talking about 9/11, I think it's fair to give a remembrance in the name of truth for a change. I salute Frederick Steingart, a man I met on about 110, 111 in Broadway regularly. He would stand there near the West Side Market as his soapbox, his opportunity to talk to people. And from there, I think we could see the World Trade Center. He would point to them. And he would explain that he had been fired from working on those towers. And his job was keeping track of quality control, that the incoming materials would match the specifications spelled out in the architect's papers. And he had the architect's papers, and he had their specs, and he would inspect, and he would say, no good, this doesn't meet the spec. It's not pure enough, it's not big enough, it's not strong enough, it's not quality enough, it's not tested enough. He would make complaints and say, this isn't right. Frederick Steingart, quality control engineer for the construction of the World Trade Centers. And he was fired. And he would stand on the 110th and 11th and say, they told me to obey my chief engineer. I was only the quality control engineer. And he told me to shut up. But God is my chief engineer, and I declare the truth. Those buildings are of unsound nature. But like I was saying, that asbestos was coming off, so the city of New York ordered the Port Authority owners to deal with it. And so they solicited bids on scraping off that asbestos foam throughout the buildings. How you get at it is a struggle. We're talking about 47 core beams, vertical columns that extend all the way up. At the base, we're talking about rectangles of steel. Each edge of the rectangle is 4 inches thick, And it's just a tube that goes all the way up, starts 4 inches, and it ends up about 1/4 of an inch at the top. Maybe 3/8 officially at the top. Those are the core beams. They had hoists, cranes operating among these core beams to build the rest of the building. They use that trick of using these core beams as sort of like permanent scaffolding to attach the cranes that had these cables and drivers and men who could steer around these hooks from the air. So bids were solicited to correct this problem, to figure out, after you scrape all the asbestos, you take it out real carefully so nobody's breathing it. And then you have to bring it somewhere on the planet. How do you do that trick? Who wants to be a repository of old asbestos? Oh, those African countries, you pay off their you give them money and they say, okay, here. I see. And what was the low bid on that project? Oh, wait a second. Wait, what? You want to replace the asbestos with fiberglass. Okay, that's the spec. You want a contract for that job? Okay, buddy. And the low bid was $2 billion. The value of the buildings, about $4 billion a piece, let's say, somewhere around $3-4 billion. But it had problems. That building had problems. It wasn't built in good faith, said Frederick Steingart. Oh, I forgot to tell you more about honoring Frederick Steingart. Are you ready for this? I invited him to be a public access producer. And he made some programs. And somewhere in my apartment, I think I retrieved from the public access librarians, they said, do you want this tape? He never came around to pick it up. And there it was, Frederick Steingart. But it turned out that what his passion turned out to be was trying to make peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and he would invite Israelis to come to talk on his show about what it would be like if the Israelis actually treated the Palestinians more or less as equals, equally entitled to the same rights. To imagine that, and the government in those terms. That was his other passion. Out of his pocket, he paid for some Israelis to come, and he made those programs, 1 or 2. And he lived in a single-room occupancy place on 112th and Riverside Drive. I lived in an adjoining building, renting a room among a bunch of West Siders. Hi, Joe Friendly, thinking out loud for you on the occasion of 9/11. So I was talking about Fred Steingart was a quality control engineer for the construction, and he said that the spirit of the whole operation was kind of wink wink. Not to take this one seriously. These babies are coming down. And it is a fact I do utter on this Memorial Day that the owners had cheerfully, that isn't a word, solemnly requested permission to bring the buildings down about 10 years before 9/11 as an alternative to blowing the $2 billion to straighten out the asbestos foam coming off that New Yorkers were breathing. And the city at the time said, no thank you, sorry fellas, that's too dangerous. Popping those buildings would be a major asbestos problem. And they suffered other problems electronically. The wiring was not up to date for modern office requirements. It was going to have to be rewired. But let's go back to 9/11. Today it is what happened and stuff like that. I was saying it was a false flag. I want to point to a seminar in Aspen, Colorado of 1998, April. The attendees are a little hard. The one I'm sure of is Scooter Libby, and Judith Miller was there, and did we lose my sound? Hello, hello, hello? Yeah, well, something's not right. So, imagining a transforming event when individuals, groups rather than governments, so they're defining terrorism, catastrophic terrorism, and ultimately there's a reference to Hollywood, nightmare scenarios, enemies of the U.S. have motive, Pakistan weapons. So this should be a national document, and here I highlighted some of the language on I think this is the second page. Yeah, this is the second page, and here's the first paragraph on the second page. If you've all right, now read it out loud. Readers should imagine the possibility for themselves, because the most serious constraint on current policy is lack of imagination. An act of catastrophic terrorism that killed thousands or tens of thousands of people and or disrupted the necessities of life for hundreds of thousands or even millions would be a watershed event in America's history. It could involve loss of life and property unprecedented for peacetime, and undermine Americans' fundamental sense of security within their own borders, in a manner to the 1949 Soviet atomic bomb test, or perhaps even worse. Constitutional liberties would be challenged as the U.S. sought to protect itself from further attacks by pressing against allowable limits in surveillance of citizens, detention of suspects, and the use of deadly force. More violence would follow as terrorists seek to initiate this great success, or as the U.S. strikes follow. Either at other terrorists seek to imitate the great success, what to say, like Pearl Harbor. Such an event would divide our past and future into a before and after. The effort and resources we devote to averting or containing this threat now in the before period will seem woeful, even pathetic, when compared to what will happen after. Our leaders will be judged negligent for not addressing catastrophic terrorism more urgently. The occasion is 9/11, and I've gone center stage with the camera and the mic and me. Here I am, Joe Friendly, the producer of Truth for a Change. And I wanted to make one important political argument, and that is that instead of the truth push of the architects and engineers pushing for 9/11 truth, there's a broader truth, and that is that it's already obvious it was controlled demolition. It's already obvious that when the building comes down in 11 seconds, you're dealing with controlled demolition, not some kind of fire weakening steel situation. That's nonsense. If fire weakened the steel, it wouldn't be an instantaneous event. The temperatures flow in a gradual, general way in different regions. The hot spots stay the hottest, but they spread some of that heat elsewhere. It's nonsense. A beginning engineer learns that heat and steel and strength don't just pop. Steel doesn't turn into wet spaghetti in an instant, and those buildings each came down after fires burning for about an hour, hour and a half. The one who got hit second came down first. Its fires were getting darker, cooling off. Its smoke. The smoke from the fires was getting darker. It's a signal. They were worried, the guys who were pushing the buttons. So the buildings came down because they were rigged. One question, well, meanwhile, I was looking at Philip Zelikows' notes there from his seminar in Colorado. Those notes go to about many pages, but there it was. If we could have a catastrophic event that killed several thousand, we could use that as a watershed event to rule by fear, for people to submit to surveillance, detentions, in something like post-Pearl Harbor, change in attitude to war, getting even, military thinking. Zelikows' offerings to the people who later became the, well, him included, he was part of the Bush administration. Zelikow, for example, was part of the team tasked with the transition of secrets from Clinton to the Bush State Department, Intelligence Department Secrets Division. So he was an insider in the extreme. He was in charge of the most delicate secrets. That was old buddy Zelikow. And he comes up more, so pay attention to that name, Zelikow, Zelikow. Now if I could, there. Is it here? Here. Okay. Hello, America. My shirt says the belly shot, Joe. There it is. But we need a little of your face too, Joe. Oh, yeah, that's a problem. One man among us, Joe Friendly, offering these new bits of information on this special day, September 11, 2014. The contract, the low bid, $2 billion to deal with the asbestos, flaking off the steel, degrading its resistance to fire. The request 10 years earlier for the buildings to come down, they were a mistake. They weren't bringing in enough rental. People didn't want to be there. And the city's saying no, the asbestos in the air would be a problem. So we've had 5 hours of 9/11 videos these last 5 days building up to this day. And they make the case pretty scientifically, don't you think, that things only made sense from the point of view of the U.S. wanting a terrorist event to happen to apply the reasoning of Zelikow, to follow through with public acceptance of a change from liberty to a war on terrorism. Incidentally, when it comes to terrorism, the U.S. is a monster unto the world, a cruel Roman-style peace, that is to say, an imposition of dictators, puppets, government, dictators that are imitations of democracy, sham democracies, sellouts, all kinds of deals with military. We're the big exporter of military. That's one of our ways we keep the dollar happening. We sell military junk to kill people with. That's the America we have to replace. That's the idea. This is the hat people tell me makes sense. Bribery rules. Hello America, Joe Friendly on this day, and the idea is, yes, 9/11 was false flag, it is a big lie, we have to cough up the big lie, but let's go the next step. How do you cough up the big lie, and what happens when you cough the big up? And stuff like that. If what we're saying is true, then our government needs replacement. Our government is that evil. And Obama has certainly been deliberate in extending the big lie rather than challenging it in the name of freedom and liberty, getting a second chance instead of this new Pearl Harbor upon us. Well, let me finish up on Zelikow. Zelikow ends up getting the job of being executive director of the 9/11 Investigation Commission. Philip Shannon of the New York Times writes a book about how he conducted the investigation of the 9/11 Investigation Commission, and says more or less he walked in with a script, chose the lawyers, told them he's the boss, nobody talks but him, edited all their reports. The 9/11 Investigation Commission was a Zelikow proposition. And therefore, it's all the more hilarious that it has been online. I don't know how much longer it could endure before they close it up. But right now, you can Google your way to learning that there is a resume that is apparently from the Zelikow side of the story, not his opponents, that Zelikow on his resume describes among his skills, his set of skills, the creation and maintenance of public myth. people say, oh, he wrote a book with Condi Rice, and yeah, he studied German propaganda, but hello. 9/11, a myth, created and maintained by Philip Zelikow. He had some help in his seminar, just to be official there. He had a former head of the CIA, Jonathan Deutsch, and another academic, current in-house political mind, Ashton Carter. Meanwhile, back at 9/11, oh, the Pentagon story, you heard that one. A little hole, where did the plane go? The rules changed that you had to get the permission of Rumsfeld in person before you could scramble, and his phone being off the hook that day. And there are shots of him going through the motions, doing the camera shots, carrying victims away. That's why he was off the hook. He was busy carrying victims off the lawn. That lawn, that's a big piece of the puzzle, the Pentagon lawn. In order for a hole that low in the ground to be made in the building, the airplane would have left a mess in the grass leading up to that hole. There was no mess in the grass. A couple of cute little pieces of a red and white and blue aluminum piece of airplane token. But there it was, a hole, and no way of anything getting into that hole except a robotic rocket. That's what went into that hole, a rocket. A Tomahawk, or its equivalent. And it was aimed at the accounting offices that Rumsfeld announced the day before would be dealing with the problem of 2.3 trillion unaccounted for in the Pentagon money war machine. Oh, America. Hi, Joe Friendly. I'll get my voice a little better there. I'm listening to it now. 9/11 is a big lie, but the point is, what do you do about a big lie once all the people realize it's a big lie? What happens next, Joe? And I was at a meeting last night in which they pretty much came up to that same question in its full academic intellectual force. Given that there is a need to replace our government, how does one do it? And my proposal is that we begin now a national discussion leading to being respected as a new national narrative, as we the people define these times in terms of our using our power as a people to insist on a change of authority in society generally, and in the name of our forefathers who cooked up the Magna Carta, and Jefferson and Madison and Adam Smith, Tom Paine, that's who I was trying to come up with. That we redeem the hope of the individual afforded full opportunity for his authority to be appreciated, his power to command being tamed by a rule that we're talking leadership only on the basis of freely given consent. Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at, folks, is revolution made simple. That if you agree 9/11 is a case of the government turning against its people, cooking up a murder of several thousand to take away its people's liberty, to make it more government at the people instead of government of and for and by the people. We do have to replace our government. That's the reason I'm embarking on this discussion, but I'm going to propose how to do that peacefully, setting a new record in the world for accomplishing without the need of violence. We discuss, we design the changes we want to happen en masse, all together. We talk about it out loud, what we want to change as a people, as is our right in a democracy, that we announce new ownership of all of it. We redesign the whole thing with the help of Joe Friendly, who promises to do it in good faith and to be fair, and you guys who got your mortgages almost pasted up, wiped out, cleaned up, paid off, you're not the ones to worry about redistributing wealth. What we're talking about is, first of all, a massive change in our economic system to deal with climate change, sustainability, coming disasters, shrinking landmass, rising sea levels. We want the public to own enough of what's going on that it will be serving in the public interest, that the mentality controlling the different economic decisions among our economic institutions. I'm ordering, or I'm offering that the public order, that the New Deal, the new arrangement after the revolution, what we're talking about happening different than is now, is we're saying that the ownership will be changed to the public such that the management will operate with the orientation that the object of the game is to serve the humanity, the public and the planet. We want those kinds of decisions happening in our public corporations. That money entrusted and its equivalent in property and ideas, that publicly owned stuff be used for the good of humanity. That's the new order. That's the revolutionary change. That means instead of the so-called free market objects of the game, instead of that, after the revolution, that we're going to say, yeah, now we're going to do it. We're going to switch over. Everybody agree? Yep, we all agree. Let's do the change. Boing. And now the public owns it, and now our new directors take their new seats at the directors' table, and we continue our public discussion of what to do with our productive facilities, capabilities. We rescue our minds from advertising and have a milieu, an environment of people actually trying to be honest in their requests for your attention. That change, systematically cleaning up our culture from the cancerous ways of commercialism. So when we realized that 9/11 was a plot by our government to take away our liberties, to get us into a passivity, to submit to our privates being fondled by government investigators. Because the World Trade Center came down the way it did. So on the Herald show coming up, I get as far as figure 4 of the Herald paper, that the way the concrete flooring turned to extraordinarily fine dust, 110 floors of concrete in each tower disappearing along with the corrugated steel pans that they were supported with. It all disappeared into extraordinarily fine dust along with extraordinarily fine, perfect spheres of pure iron that was also in the dust. And among the pictures you've seen in these 5 hours, there is that scene of the white dust among a bunch of vehicles burned to a crisp. And what I figured out is that white dust must have been very hot, somewhere up the regions of where it started. When it started being dust, it was at 4,500 degrees, more or less, Fahrenheit. And then it came down to settle up, but along the way down, it burned those vehicles that crispy. Dust that was 4,500 or 4,000 degrees. What does that do to a car, a truck, the paint, the upholstery? We saw what it did. So how did that, here's what I wanted to offer. On September 12th, 2000, the World Trade Authority put up a request for more bids. This time, another asbestos problem. This time, vinyl asbestos floor tiles. Who will bid on this problem? Whoop, whoop, we got a bid, we got a bid. What did October, they announced the winning low bid. $1 million, and the winner is LVI Services. President Burton Freed. Thank you. You got the job. Now we have already talked about that $2 billion asbestos removal that the city was worried was coming off and the New Yorkers were breathing it. That problem had not been addressed any longer after the $2 billion estimate. But here they're worried about asbestos for $1 million. Asbestos floor tiles. That's a joke. That's not a serious asbestos problem. You don't breathe the air from those asbestos floor tiles. That's pretty well mated up with the vinyl. It stays there. Pretty good tiles, actually. But that contract did give the LVI Services Incorporated Company free run of the buildings for the year leading up to 9/11, from about October 27 or something when they were officially given the contract till September, you know when, 2001, 9/11, that 9/11. You had LVI Services having complete run of the building, and here I am a witness to say that I looked online on the LVI Services website. Their principal business was turnkey preparation of buildings for controlled demolition. Now around 2006, 2007, they changed their website so that wasn't up front and at you their principal form of business. They changed that so that their list number 1 was dealing with asbestos problems, and number 2 was preparing buildings for controlled demolition. So they did try to fix up that little mistake. Somewhere along the line, they also said that they tend to work as a subcontractor for a larger controlled demolition company called, actually, Controlled Demolition Incorporated. And in the different videos about 9/11, the head of that company and his son, also a participant in the company, they talk about 9/11 and demolition and stuff. They did get the contract to clean up after the buildings came down. They did get the contract to clean up the Oklahoma bombing mess. So they've been a regular part of the scene at Washington, if you know what I mean, wink wink and stuff like that. They were already sort of a friend. And it is a fact that on the Controlled Demolition website, I did notice that they did brag in their advertising for new clients that if you hired them to do your controlled demolition, one of the features of their service is to avoid the need for cutting the steel up after the building comes down, but to plan that before the building comes down, to plan for the steel being in lengths convenient for trucking away, approximately 31 feet long, is just right for trucking away on these flatbed trucks. So when they bring a building down, they have their cutting charges pre-placed to accomplish that, so the steel is already easy to truck away. And indeed, that was a feature of the 9/11 event that Americans and New Yorkers lived through, that the steel was pre-cut to 30-foot lengths. Again, if Zelikow had made a legitimate investigation, that would have jumped out at him early on, but he was into maintaining public myth mode of existence, not providing any truth for a change. So that's a little nugget for these days, that who did it? LVI did it for Controlled Demolition Incorporated, and that's why the steel was in 30-foot lengths. But hey, wait a minute. What about, how did the concrete turn to dust, Joe? What they found in the dust was nanothermite. Nanothermite is a super explosive that works so well it can be sprayed on, and what they found in the dust was a new form of nanothermite developed, engineered for spraying on, that was a new age accomplishment of modern engineering, to have nano-sized, uniform size hexagonal plates of aluminum nestled in protective silicon carbide nano-sized chambers with uniform size and shape cubes, rhomboids of Fe2O3. This stuff was sprayed
as an Iraqi agent. She was accused of warning.
Oh yeah, her, this Susan Lindauer, again, I remember they're saying she accepted free lunch or something like that. That's what they're putting her in jail for. They didn't have much against her. But I wanted to show you spraying the nanothermite figure 4 carat Okay, I'm typing in figure 4 Herod image LVI services. And here's me, why so much fine white powder all over ground zero. Here, let's get a better look at that. So here's the story I just told you. I can click on it. But I wanted to get to the the flooring was nowhere to be seen after the collapse. It turned to extraordinarily fine dust, steel pans included. That made cleanup a lot easier, not having to truck away so much concrete, drywall, and people, but it washing down the sewers with the rain. Here's how that happened. A request for bids. The winning bid was for $1 million. LBI Services, that gave them complete run of the buildings for the months remaining. The website for their services in 2006 stated their principal business was preparing buildings for controlled demolition. The concrete flooring turned to extra fine dust because it was sprayed with a special form of super explosive nanothermite, particularly engineered for spraying upon surfaces, which is what the paper found in all 4 samples. Nanoscale aluminum and rust particles of thermate maintained in touching contact by containment in tiny silicon carbide chambers atop nano-sized ceramic chips, so the spray medium would not interfere with the necessary touching contact. Figures 3 and 4 can be viewed online. Okay, so now we're going to try to view those online. So we go images, and I don't see them yet. Let's see, let's go back to this. Figure 4, oh, we have to take out LBI Services for this part. Control CX. Okay. Thermitic. Okay, so this is the nano chips. So this is ceramic, and then on it, this stuff is the red stuff. Here's a close-up. This is the red stuff some more. And here it is up close. This is the big one. This is figure 4. And this is a plate of aluminum, and those little things are cubes of Fe2O3. So that's, and they're in chambers atop the ceramic chip. So this is a close-up of this, which is on top of that. So you have ceramic. Again, this is nanoscale. This is extremely small. This is power of, well, it tells you this is 20 millimeters or 20 microns. Looks like microns. So, wish I knew what that, but that's That's the scale. And these plates of aluminum and Fe2O, that's what thermate is that touching contact of Fe2O3, otherwise known as rust, and aluminum in physical contact, and that's what achieves a temperature of 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit when they exchange the oxygen atom and it moves from the rust to the aluminum. That was discovered in the 1890s to build the railroad, that it gets that hot. So that's the only one I see in that chamber. Here's more. That's a little better example. You can see how many plates are with their rust buddies. That's the author of the paper. So, dear America, that isn't the picture I wanted to show you. I wanted to show you LVI Services spraying this stuff on the LVI. Let's just do that. Looks like I have to say services. Yeah, there's the picture I wanted. Here we have corrugation above them, and they're spraying. They're spraying this stuff we were just showing in figure 4. They're mixing it with paint and spraying it under the what looks like the ceiling, but it's really the underside of the flooring above them. And in the World Trade Center, they ordinarily wouldn't have all that much room to move, that's for sure. But for a nice picture opportunity, there it is. And that is the LVI company. Are there any more of those pictures? I did see one that had the other shape to it. That's the only one. I'm thankful at least we found that one. And it's who I said, so they know how to spray corrugated flooring with nanothermite. According to Joe Friendly, they haven't admitted the nanothermite, that's for sure. But why would you spray flooring, fellas? What's the point of spraying all that corrugated steel? What's the object? What's the reason? What's going on, Fies? So this has been a kind of impromptu marijuana advertisement, legalized freedom, that the marijuana laws I submit are unconstitutional, that the demonization of marijuana was a project of the Nixon administration, among others. There is this book that gives the details, the politics of the demonization. It was a form of political oppression of the hippies, the 60s people, the people who said, hey, we need fundamental change. This whole thing is going in the wrong direction, that people aren't enjoying their work. Working for a corporation tears at the conscience. It tears at the balls. It tears at the heart. It drives men and women to drink and smoke, and tobacco, that is. So, America, the truth for a change, that what I propose we do about it all is begin a national discussion about how it should be after the revolution. That how it would be if our corporations were actually oriented to doing the right thing. That we wouldn't have to worry about bureaucrats running everything, because it would be a more transparent, open, people-to-people thing. But when you talk about changing ownership from the private sector to the government, that is a nightmare for a lot of people. They go, oh dear, that is not a good way to run things. And it is a fact that the way things are now, the government is not a good way to run things. I have to concede that. What we are talking about is coming up with big changes in that, in participation, government as people being open to reason with rather than rules. That's a big piece of the revolution I'm proposing, that we aim early on for our new form of government to be generous with public participation. We're going to have, as best we can, we'll try to achieve a cell phone direct democracy. And one of the things I do claim along the way, I don't know how much time we got if the program is coming to an end and all, but one of the things I do brag about is making some progress on accomplishing justice by taking heed of the suggestion in Jacob's song to his 12 sons in the Bible. When he gets to the one I figured out represents midwinter, the one born after Capricorn, the Aquarius. The name Dan. Capricorn is Judah, the goat. Then comes Dan. And then on his deathbed, Dan declares that these people are the ones to entrust with being our judges. And when society comes to appreciate their intuitive grasp of those things necessary for accomplishing justice, when we appreciate that, we'll have salvation, otherwise known as the Aquarian Age. But hello, I'm proposing a progress on achieving justice by finding out there are people with such an intuitive knack for achieving justice that we can relax the rules and regulations game and just trust to their intuitive gift. So in other words, if you need some justice, you call up the Aquarian, you say this is the situation, and you don't need a lawyer, you don't need money, you just explain it, and what needs to be done gets done. Would you like that as a new way for dealing with our court system? Or would you prefer form or substance, is how they used to teach. Our system is form without substance at this point. So, Joe Friendly is saying that 9/11 was a big lie, and there was, as a participant, LVI. And how did they get in and out of the buildings? The security firm was the same ones for United Airlines and American Airlines, and they had Bush relatives on board. The main thing is we do need a fundamental change in our government, and that language we have to develop. We want full opportunity for individual development. We want an actual democracy in which people actually participate in the choices that are currently determined by higher-ups. We need a revolution by our designing in the comfort of our home and our screens, designing a new way for things to be that the angels would cheer, in which humanity thrives, and we don't do further damage to the environment. The climate danger is huge. It's sort of a similar rank to the big lie of 9/11. They both argue for the people somehow changing the arrangement of power such that the current owners are replaced by the people and a revolutionary council. I could name off the top somewhere between 30 and 100 names that we could say these are the Arab Spring new rulership. If it gets confusing who to listen to. If our soldiers said, we quit listening to Obama, we want to listen to the new revolutionary leadership, they could assume that power early on as we conduct our language about how to rescue our culture from commercial advertising and Hollywood and the banks and the Powell Memorandum think tank tricks with our culture, institutions. We have to rescue our culture from commercialism, that is, the commercial corporations are like a cancer, bribing their way around the world. So 9/11 was a big lie, and there are other lies, and they're hiding the climate change urgency. We need a new social order, a new way of looking at money and ownership and property and government and information flow. And I hope to encourage people to use marijuana in a way that promotes solutions to these problems, that promotes efforts at articulating next steps to go in correcting this wrong, replacing this wrong reality with something worthy of the name, a new reality. People treating each other wholesomely, in good faith, with goodwill, that replacing commercialism. And right now we don't have crisis. It would be an elegant time to switch rather than a time of disaster. We could just announce with the ringing of a bell the change to opening our hearts. And if we have trouble opening our hearts, we don't know what it feels like, that's the time to smoke some marijuana, even on the job, and to look around and puzzle and say, yeah, what changes should we make? How would we like it to be after the revolution? Give me another toke, I want to think about that. If you have a good idea, what should you have to do to get your idea considered in your organization? To get proper consideration? Is there a culture developed that good ideas are welcome? So marijuana has been demonized as a drug, but basically what it does is give your senses a chance to come alive after they've been somehow turned off by your culture. And you have a second chance to consider, should they be on or off. Sexual feelings we tend to turn off, but here marijuana gives you a second chance at those, among others. I find marijuana helps me puzzle through problems that require imagination to solve. It allows my imagination to consider visually, more vividly, alternatives in the considering of solving problem by working through different possibilities in my head. Enough of Joe Friendly. I am curious. Why don't you just call me up, 212-864-2828, and leave me a message. I watch your show, Joe. I've come to expect surprises from your show, Joe. Really good information. It's like running a university, arranging lectures. I do have a taste for good lectures, an eye for them, a fascination for them. In college, I would go to all the 4 o'clock extracurricular visiting lectures. I just have been fascinated with visiting lectures. And I believe in revolution by lecture. I'll get into that, but anyhow, yes. So the events coming up for the truth movement, so it be, if you want to join up with other people who see the truths you've been exposed to, we start the day with a protest with signs and banners at the World Trade Center. We've already missed that. At 11, a press conference, I assume at Ground Zero, nearby. We convene at 2 p.m. in the East Village for the premiere of the movie that requires the purchase of tickets, I believe. I think they're $8. After the film showing, there will be a mini march up to Union Square. We're educating the public about 9/11. The truth about 9/11 continues. At 8, we attend a premiere of a play. This is not about 9/11. Addresses unanswered questions about the topic that causes most New Yorkers to go silent. The play, which has received rave reviews, was written by 9/11 family member Sarah Van Auken, daughter of one of the 4 Jersey girls. Then Friday, at 10 o'clock in the morning, street actions at Ground Zero, where 9/11 Truth has been active for so many years. They feature an alternative guide to the museum. That's what we'll be handing out. And you can get your free copy by just clicking there at this website we're at. So ae911truth.org. You go there first, that's the home base, and then EN, I guess, means English. And this is their piece of the internet, this page, announcing events happening tomorrow on the 12th. The day begins. Let's get a nice shot of that. Street actions. So that's it. I'll be videoing that interaction probably. But what is the point? The point is it's becoming obvious when you see the videos. The videos are getting better and better, but oh well, that comes next. Saturday. For the third day in a row, the object is to get flyers, thousands of flyers, into the hands of tourists. Immediate Ground Zero. Then at 2, we host the main event of the 3-day gathering, a symposium led by Richard Gage. Discussion of the explosive evidence and the recent media breakthrough with C-SPAN. Special guests Mark Crispin Miller, Wayne Madsen will take a hard-hitting look of the censorship involved, and several family members. So that's coming up tomorrow at 2. And then Times Square for the third showing of her play, This Is Not About 9/11. And Sunday, there's that. I don't know what that was at Sunday. Oh, time off, they're saying. Okay. So I decided that deserved inclusion in this broadcast. Joe Friendly learning how to make videos of himself at home. Did you notice?